There's something so vibrant in the air today, and it just shows how a communal prayer could influence the vibration so much. We know today is the Jewish New Year and the Mohammedan New Year, and at this time they are in prayers, and if not in prayers, their minds are led to a far better level, to a better quality of life. And that does influence the environment. And as we know ourselves, that through our meditation, our environment and circumstances are so beautifully improved. So, when there is a collective meditation or even a depth into some form of prayer, it has great effect on the environment. Today, for example, while I was meditating, I didn't feel like going out of meditation and would have sat here for 2 hours. There's a thing. So there is so much to say for groups getting together. When we find that 24 minds are to a certain extent reach a deeper level and they become calmer, then automatically the whole atmosphere becomes calm. And in that state of meditation, I see to myself each and every one sitting here with eyes closed so clearly, and a prayer wells up. And in that prayer, an energy force is exuded, which reaches every mind, heart, and body. And thereby we have found that these group meetings are so important, especially when we are trying to evolve spiritually and also, of course, to evolve in the material world and in the environment and make life more smoother. So this getting together has great value. Even the Bible has said that if two people get together in my name, I am there. So when the minds are still through meditation, we do find that in that stillness, never mind to what extent or how deep the stillness goes, it does have such a beautiful effect on the environment. And everything seems to be spiritual. Beautiful. Good. Let us start with questions.
Guruji, what I wanted to ask was about the self, the I. Quite often you mention to us that, or you ask us for what have you said at the satsang, because some I is speaking which in a sense is forgetful or is beyond the normal I that asks the question, what have I said? And what I wanted to know is, if it is the same I that talks, the universal self, then what actually is the apparently more gross I that asks what has been proceeding? Because we've understood that the two were merged. So I just wanted to
Now, as we all know, that the human being is composed of two eyes. You have the small I, which can be equated with the ego, or rather is the ego. And then the big I, the small I has its limitations. It has its boundaries, and the boundaries are created by its own physiology, biology, psychology, and all the conditionings that has gone into the existence of man from times past. All those constitute the small I. But behind the constitution of the small I is the big I. And the big I is limitless. It is like in a motor car, you have a limitless tank of petrol. The small I is the engine and the works, the gears, the pistons, the body. But yet that would remain useless and would not be put into any motion if the big I was not there, or rather in this case, if the petrol was not there. So, the big I permeates all actions, all thoughts, and all doings of the small I. But the degrees of permeation of the big I depends entirely upon the openness or the development or the unfoldment of the small I. And that is the aim and goal and strife of all human beings. Now, the small I could be so immersed in its material longings, but yet in that immersing in material longings, there is something that pushes one on. The small I, the ego I, does not comprehend or understand what pushes it on. But there is an innate desire in the small I, the ego, for its own betterment. And the path to betterment, or the result of the betterment, is generally termed as happiness. So the small I, with all its limitation, yet intuitively or basically, essentially recognizes that there is that big I, some infinite power that is guiding the destiny of the small I. But even in the recognition of that infinite power, the small I is so conditioned that it is unable to accept the vastness of the big I. Why is it incapable to accept the vastness? Is because the small I has its limitations. Now, what must the small I do? The only thing it can do, it can gain understanding intellectually, it can develop devotion and various other things. Yet, how to let the fullest impact of the big I permeate the small I, that always remains the question. And all striving of humanity is to find that mystery, to find the secret of every action and every thought. Now we know that we cannot lift a finger, we can't wiggle our toes if there was not some other power. A flower cannot grow in spite of the rain and the sun and the minerals in the ground and the watering and everything. It will still not grow if there was not some inexplicable power of the big I to coordinate the various physical elements to make that flower grow. Likewise, the human being grows, and in its growth, the most important part that is played is by that infinite power. Now, we have discussed this many times, that inherent in man, the infinite power is there. So, the duty of the person that wants to find happiness has to contact the big I. The big I can be contacted, as we discussed last week, by these various yogas, whereby contact is established. Of course, in our foundation, we have found, rediscovered rather, ancient wisdom, whereby by a very quiet, silent, peaceful means, we can contact the big I. And we know through experience that by that contact, by drawing from that infinite reservoir, the quality of our bodies and mind improve. But the question still remains, when? How soon? Why not now? So, there is a way that one can strive very hard in purifying the mind. One can strive very hard in purifying the body. Now, all say the body is a temple of God. So we keep the body clean, internally and externally. That is part of the way. By having good thoughts in our minds all the time, where good thoughts are dominating, thoughts of compassion, of love, of friendship, of deep feeling towards another. That is also a way where the mind is purified, but that too remains a part of the process. So the physical body has a way which forms a part of the process. The mental body has a way which forms part of the process. And these processes makes the mind and body more conducive to receive the infinite power of the big I. Now, the small I is so small that it cannot contain the infinity of the big I. So what do we do there? Now, there are ways and means whereby even the limited small I, the ego, can be annihilated. Where the small mind and body can be annihilated, or rather sublimated or transcended. That is the quickest way, because we want to experience these things in this life. And we want it because we feel sure by our experiences and by the intuition, the inner voice that tells us that there is something greater. Now, what happens? What are the mechanics? Does the small I merge away into the big I? And what are the mechanics of mergence? Is it a mergence? Is it a subduance? Is it a sublimation? Or is it annihilation? That remains the big question. Now, the small I can be sublimated by force, where we force the mind to go into a certain channel of goodness. We force the body not to put in things into the body which would be harmful to the body and create more toxins. There too, force is required. We can sublimate the mind and the body. But in sublimation, we have to be very careful that it is not a substitution or a transference. There could be another process too, where there is transmutation. You transmute certain physical energies into something else, so that the physical and mental energies are not dissipated, but they are used in another form. A person by nature is, say, very aggressive. His mind is aggressive, and his mind translates itself through his body in greater aggression and acts of violence. Right. Now, he can transmute that same energy. It is the same energy that works in good or bad. He can transmute all his violence and all his aggressiveness in another form of chopping down a tree. And after he chops down the tree, believe you me, his anger would be gone. He's taking it out in his axe. Right? His aggression is gone because there is an underlying factor of anger, even in aggression. And his violence disappears because through his acts too, he is taking out of himself the violence onto the tree stump. Now, that is transmutation. But even in transmutation, what could happen? Does the seed remain behind the aggressive mind? And is the mind and body involved in the transmutation, getting rid of the seed that is there? Is the seed of those energies that are negatively used, is the seed completely annihilated? There too, transmutation can fall short. Perhaps the surface anger, the surface violence, the surface aggression can just be taken out on the tree. But the basis, the root, the essence is there. Now what do we do? These processes form parts of the processes, but not the complete process. Now in our system, we have found that by transcending the mind, going beyond the mind in our spiritual practices, we draw upon that divine reservoir that is within us and let that current flow through the mind and the body. Now, what happens there is that it automatically transmutes energies of the mind into positivity. Right? With this way, one would be a willful act, a forceful act of the mind to transmute that aggressiveness in another act. But here, with the flow of those divine, subtle energies into that mind, it annihilates the aggressiveness because it fills it up. An analogy I always use, if you have a jug of water, dirty water, put that dirty water jug under a tap and open the tap. So, as the clean water falls into the jug, the dirty water is automatically thrown out. The dirty water is automatically thrown out, and eventually the jug will contain clean water. So, by we constantly doing our meditations, we are doing the same thing. We are adding this divine power into the mind and the body, and the mind and the body has a limitation of containing just a certain quantity of energy. So the positive energy is being more forceful and powerful, it pushes out the negative energies. So in this process, it is not sublimation, it is not transmutation, but an automatic, spontaneous annihilation. So the evil tendencies or the wrong negative tendencies are painlessly removed. They are dissolved. They are thrown out. Therefore, we have found our system the easiest system. There are other systems that require a person to go through various forms of penances, and where the body is mortified, where the body is put through so many tortures, and a certain kind of discipline is enforced upon us. Now, enforcing of a discipline, does it help? Does it help? Is it rooting out the basic tendency? Is it rooting out the tendency at its fundamental value? No. The fundamental value of an outward expression, a grosser expression, is so subtle that the subtle basic value of the tendency can only be eradicated or annihilated by another positive subtle value. That is why we are so successful in our meditations, because we are exercising the subtlest value of the mind to push out the grossness of the other parts of the mind. And when grossness is put out, pushed out, annihilated, then it is filled with the subtle energies. Subtle energies. Nothing can remain a vacuum. The body does not remain a vacuum. The mind does not remain a vacuum. What happens is a change of quality. The change of quality between grossness and subtleness. And that is progression. That is progressive evolution, where from the gross one reaches the subtle and then goes beyond it. And then when one goes beyond it, it does not matter. But it is a systematic scientific process. You have some systems in India, for example, where you would find a yogi standing on one leg and staring into the sun until the eye sockets burn out. And he stands on one leg because he's been told that this will take you to nirvana, will take you to self-realization. In many cases, if the person has sufficient faith, the faith alone can help him so much towards nirvana or self-realization. But what an arduous process. What an arduous process. As we always say, that if something can be done more easily, more joyfully, and the same results are achieved, then why not that? I was using an analogy during the week when someone came to see me. Say in front of us there is a big boulder. Now we want to shift that boulder. Now it will require great physical energy, not of one man, but perhaps of 10 men to push that boulder away. Now, if we use common sense and we use the leverage, then one child with the principle of leverage can push the boulder away. So if there are easier methods, more joyful methods, more pleasant methods, then we use the more pleasant and joyful ones. We do not decry any other method whatsoever. Some people with certain masochistic tendencies, for example, would want sufferings inflicted upon them. Unnecessary. Because the infliction of suffering on a person is not going to rid him of suffering. He is reconditioning his mind to suffering so that eventually he'll do everything that will bring suffering to him. Now, if that man is a highly evolved man, not a wayfarer, then that suffering too can become joy. But wayfarers that have not reached the destination of self-realization do not need to go through these processes, because the whole end and aim is to annihilate the ego, the small ego, so that the big I can permeate every action, every thought, every word, every deed, all the time. And then we act in life from that level of that great forceful subtlety that makes everything more and more joyful, more and more brilliant, more and more luminous. The awareness expands, the mind can perceive things at a far deeper, meaningful level. The actions have a dynamic quality to it, where even you think a thought and immediately the thought materializes. You think, I want 10 rand to pay a bill. Somehow or the other it just comes. Now that is acting from the deeper level. But to reach there, we have to go beyond the conditionings of the mind. And a great part of the mind is ego. Ego is the sum totality of a person's personality. Ego has other counterparts. Ego is part of the mind. The mind is divided for the purposes of explanation into things like the intellect, the one that weighs, right? We call it buddhi in Sanskrit. Then we have manas, the carrier of all past sanskaras and impressions. And the sum totality of these things, perceiver, the computer, the intellect, the carrier, the feeder of the information into the computer, all these things are those that go up to make the ego. And therefore, when we say, when we talk of the small ego, we talk in this instance of the man's entire personality as it is expressed here and now. Now, by certain methods of thinking, certain methods of analysis, we can, to a certain extent, direct the ego. But even in the direction of that ego, it is still remaining in the realms of the ego. One person has a kind of personality, another person has a crueler personality. Fine, but there are still personalities within the framework of that ego. A person would do certain kind acts, fine, there might be ego involved in doing those kind acts. We have found many philanthropists, perhaps, charitable people that would donate funds to building a school. Fine. But there is one condition, that my little statue must be in the garden. This school was built by Mr. XYZ. So even in the greatest philanthropy, there could be the expression of ego. Because what this person is trying to do really, he knows that in 60, 70 years or whatever the lifespan, he has to leave his body. But he is so attached to his body that through a philanthropic act, he wants to perpetuate his body and his name. It's a great expression of ego. Fine. And you have another person that would do a very small act as handing a flower to someone. And in the handing of that flower is whole complete sum totality of the personality, permeated by that big I, symbolized here as love. And a person gives that flower in such a reverence that the totality of him is given with the flower. Look at the great difference between the philanthropist, the so-called philanthropist, and the giver of one simple flower. Now, who is greater? The one has a greater measure of the big I penetrating the small I, while the other has the small I so big that it doesn't give the bigger I any chance whatsoever. So, what we do is through many ways, depending upon our own temperaments, we try and subdue or annihilate the small I. And according to temperament, we start where we are. We use the mind, we use devotion, we use good living, and this will lead there to a certain extent. But if it is backed up by our spiritual practices, by our meditations, all the thinking would become more powerful. All the action would become more powerful. The devotion will become more powerful and more sincere. So all this must be backed by those meditational practices to make all these various aspects, to make all these various temperaments of mind more powerful and dynamic. And being more powerful and dynamic, the quicker it progresses and quicker the goal. The faster you progress, you come quicker to the goal. So, many times you find a person doing a certain act and he says, oh, in retrospect, is, that was my ego. Fine. And then instead of doing something about the ego that caused hardship, he does nothing. He says, that was ego, and discards it. Very good, very good. Discard it by all means. But what should we do to see that in future the ego does not express itself in that way again? What we do is we do our meditational practices, and we use those practices to strengthen the areas in our lives which are strong and amplify them. A man has a great analytical brain. To use the inner forces through meditation to make that brain more thinking and greater dynamism. Person has great devotion. So we use that inner power and infuse it into the devotion which we are portraying to divinity, or to man, or to our wives, our husbands. That is the way. That is the way. Because ego is a very tricky thing, very tricky, just as tricky and just as cunning as the mind is. The small ego is nothing but seeking self-preservation. The small ego, the dharma or the karma of the small ego is seeking self-preservation. There was an experiment conducted where they took a chimpanzee and put it in a pool of water. The chimpanzee had a small baby, and slowly they started filling the pool. So the water reached up to the knees and then to the stomach and then to the chest and neck, and here up to the mouth, and start coming to the nose, and the chimpanzee could not breathe. And as the water was rising, it was pushing its baby higher and higher and higher up. It was protecting the baby because the mother has the protective instinct. But when the chimpanzee found that it is going to lose its life, she immediately put the little monkey, the little baby, under it and tried to stand up on it. So this is a scientific experiment conducted. So, a person for self-preservation will even sacrifice its own flesh and blood. And that is a state of today's humanity. That is a state of today's mind of men. Preservation of the ego. What are they preserving? That is to be questioned. They're preserving this frail little body, this stupid little mind that one moment thinks this way and one moment thinks that way. One moment thinks he loves someone and the next moment he thinks he hates another one. That fickle mind, is he preserving this body which means nothing and will perish away or fall off tomorrow? He's preserving that. He's preserving a mind that is so fickle and so non-consequential. So the values of preservation are even wrong. And the values of preservation are wrong because they are preserving something which is not permanent. Yet everyone knows, as I first said, that there is that quality within us, the big I, which is changeless and eternal. So, in the preservation of the small ego, we, instead of annihilating the ego, we are annihilating divinity. That's what we do. We become oblivious of divinity. And yet, as we said, that without that divinity, we cannot even lift a finger. Without that energy, we cannot do it. That is the state of the world's mind. So, we proceed by trying to annihilate the ego. It's not an overnight process. It's been conditioned for millions of years, but it can be annihilated. It can be subdued. And once the subdual or annihilation comes, it automatically disappears. Disappears in the sense that even the mind and the ego is made of matter. It is matter. Thought is matter. Emotion is matter. It is not an abstract quality. It is matter in a subtle form. So when that same matter is made even finer and finer and finer, it cannot but help to merge away into the infinite quality. And that is how, those are the mechanics of how the ego is annihilated, sublimated, transmuted in that subtle form. Then these words, annihilation, subduing, transmuting, sublimating, then only these words become meaningful. Otherwise, it is a children's exercise. A children's exercise, doing it in a very, very gross way. And yet we have the ways where these things can be done. Instead of tackling it by controlling these things, we rather dive deep within ourselves and bring that energy out that automatically controls and subdues and sublimates. Does that cover your question? Yes?
I wanted to know, well, let's ask about enlightened people. Can an enlightened man live in everyday activity in a state like samadhi? Now, we understand samadhi to be that which is completely beyond change. But is it not possible to live that divinity completely infused in everyday activity such that there's no real break in consciousness or real significant change between, say, living in daily activity and going into samadhi?
So basically the question is that can the self-realized man live a ordinary life in daily activity? Fine. Now he can. A self-realized man is a person who is beyond the attachment of all the qualities of daily living. But the self-realized man, still being embodied, has to perform his physical and biological functions. He has to eat, he has to have rest, he has to go to the loo. Fine. So all these functions, even the self-realized man performs. But his performance has that subtle quality to it that his very breath is meaningful to the atmosphere of the world. His very breath he breathes is meaningful. A self-realized person can choose to go and sit in the Himalayas and there be in his samadhi and bide the time, so that the momentum created by his past karmas just have to wear off gradually. Like a top, we spin a top and after the top spins, it still has some momentum that it has to run off. And when that momentum runs off, he discards the body. Then you have another kind of self-realized person that identifies himself with every action in the world, every action of society. He identifies himself with every human being, with every animal, with every creature, with every plant, that the heartbeat of the plant is also his heartbeat, that the heartbeat of a human being is also his heartbeat. Now he does this. He does this for the purpose of teaching. He, before taking birth, had a choice to merge away into divinity So this you will find in Buddhism if you study it. He has the choice of merging away into the nothingness. Call it nothingness, although that nothingness is a great something. Huh? By that nothingness, let us tell a very well-known story. The story goes, a chela goes to a guru, and the chela wanted to find the secret of all this energy that controls the whole universe. So the guru says, go to that tree and bring a fruit. The chela did that. He says, open the fruit and take out a seed. The chela did that, took out the seed. And he says, now break open the seed. The chela broke open the seed. And he says, what do you find in the seed? The chela says, nothing. But yet it was that nothing within that seed, that so-called apparent nothing within that seed, that formed that seed, that grew that tree, which bore fruit. So, the realized man has the choice of becoming that nothingness, that so-called nothingness in that seed. He has that choice. But he thinks, no, let me not merge away. Let me not prick this balloon so my air in this balloon becomes merged in the air, the universal air. No, let me remain individual. Let me be born. There is a lot of work to be done. And this happens with some people through a certain magnetic attraction. The universe, or say this world's atmosphere, creates a certain magnetism. In other words, all the karmic and dharmic values of this world form a certain demand. And because of the magnetism radiated by this planet, it automatically calls upon someone, pulls down someone who is likewise inclined to help, and brings down that personage onto the earth to help. And that is what is meant by avatars. Yet, the magnetic pull has been so strong, but the self-realized person in that state had the choice to come or not. It could refuse magnetism. It could create a barrier, not to be influenced by the magnetism. But there in that state, it says, that realized man hovers on the brink of unity. Can merge away, sits on the fence, merge away into unity, or come this way into the world. But he feels, sitting on that bridge, that there is so much magnetic pull here, and I am needed. And this magnetic pull, this call that has come to me for a purpose to help. So let me go through voluntarily the pains of rebirth so that I can help and bring a message to the world, better the lives of people. That is why the Gita says, from age to age, I will come again and again. These are avatars, and they come by free choice to help. And therefore, their teachings, their messages have always remained eternally true, because what they teach are universal laws, irrefutable, undiscoverable. Discovered, yes, in that sense, like as you mentioned, the law of gravity was there all the time. Newton just sort of formalized it, put it in a system, and they call it rediscovering it. He never invented it. Likewise, universal teachers, Krishna, Buddha, Christ, universal teachers. They worked on the same universal principles which are existing from eternity, from infinity. And what they do is take those same universal principles and formulate them in such a way which is more conducive to the sum total mentality of the world. In other words, they use those teachings, universal teachings, so that they could be readily applicable to the conditions of the world. And when such people come, there is always some betterment in the world. Always some betterment. Always the world becomes a better world. Always. Because of this message. And so therefore, the self-realized man has that choice of coming back. He has the choice. Now, when an avatar comes, because of the pains of birth, because of having to descend from a very subtle state to a grosser state, he has taken upon himself all the dirt and the mud proceeding through that dirty street. He gets full of dust. So even the avatar, though born enlightened, have to spend some years shedding off that dust and dirt and taking a bath. And then the avatar too becomes ready to teach his real message. But he has to go through the process of shedding off the dirt that he has purposefully taken on him. And then they are ready. Buddha, Christ, Krishna never started teaching since the day they were born. Christ started his ministry when he was 30. Fine. Buddha started his ministry when he was about past 40, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Somewhere there, well, dates are not necessary really. And same thing with these great personages that came to the earth as persons, and that are in reality the embodiment of divinity. And that is why Christian people regard Christ as a god. That is why Buddhistic people regard Buddha as a god. And that is why the Hindu people regard Krishna as a god. These are the reasons for it. And if these reasons are properly understood, they form a channel of analysis, devotion, and they teach practices and what have you. And thereby man can be uplifted to that beautiful, sublime level where it can only be interpreted as bliss, that beautiful joy. And it is the birthright of everyone. I've repeated this over and over. It is the birthright of everyone to be joyful. And the path to joy, too, with proper understanding and proper perspective, can be joyful. Always. Let's sit here. What's next?
I'm interested in what effect is the Kundalini? Physical thing, is it a spiritual experience, or what?
What is the Kundalini? Is it a physical fact or a spiritual experience? Good. Kundalini is a form of symbolism. Kundalini is described as a serpent at the base of the spine, sitting down there, coiled in 3.5 coils or something. And according to the tantric literature, it must uncoil itself. It's symbolized as a snake. It must uncoil himself and rise through the various chakras. Now, the chakras in a person can also, there are many interpretations to this. I'll give you a few of them. The rise of the chakras proceed through the rise of the Kundalini power. serpent power, someone has called it too, rise through all these various chakras, and there are 7 in man. You have the Muladhara chakra, which is the lower one. Then you have the Swadhisthana chakra. From there you proceed to the chakra at the navel, which is the Manipur. From there you proceed to the chakra of the heart, which is called the Anahata. Then you proceed to the chakra of the throat, which is called the Visuddha. And then you proceed to the chakra here in the forehead, which is the Ajna. And then the very top one of realization is the Sahasrara. Now in Kundalini Yoga, they take into consideration these various chakras. Now they maintain that as the power of the Kundalini rises, now the Kundalini power is always there through 2 psychic nerves. They call it the Ida and the Pingala, which are forever flowing in spiral form. But to wake up the real Kundalini Shakti, it is to take the power from the Ida and the Pingala nervous system and have it proceed through the most vital nerve, most vital psychic nerve called the Sushumna. Now, these are Sanskrit terms. I'm using them so that you could perhaps familiarize yourself with them in case you want to make some deep study into this. Now, the purpose is, what they say is this, that as that power, as that snake rises up the Sushumna, it opens up all these various chakras that we have talked about. And in opening up these chakras are the blocks towards self-realization. And as by certain of tantric practices, as the power of the Kundalini is raised, it pierces through all these various chakras. Right. Now, this could be very, very symbolic. We can put another interpretation to it, that in the human system, divinity can be portrayed through this energy. And as we activate this energy, we are activating, as we activate the energy and making it rise in ourselves, we are activating these various subtle chakras. Now we know whichever positions have been given to us are very high nervous complexes. For example, the navel, the heart area, they're very high nervous complexes. And the idea would be to purify these nervous complexes. And by the purification of these various chakras or nervous plexuses, this energy within man can express itself more fully. That is one of the ideas. Now, in Tantric literature, they describe it very beautifully that at the Sahasrara resides Shiva, Brahman or God. And within man's system is that energy, the Kundalini, which is also known as Shakti. That Shakti could be raised. So when Shakti and Shiva merge into each other, become one with each other, then there is illumination, self-realization. Now this Shakti is in everyone. What we have to do is heighten the Shakti or awaken the Shakti so that it merges away into that which is called divinity and becomes one, joins a union between Shiva and Shakti. This is another way of them looking at it. From a scientific angle, we can readily see, and these various subtle solar complexes, solar and other nervous complexes, can be perceived by the third eye, or the psychic power, the sixth sense. It can be perceived as a very luminous light that is within man, that power, that electricity is there. And as the electricity proceeds through the wire, in that wire of the psychic system, we have all these various complexes which are nothing but distribution agencies, like an electrical distribution board. Now, from the one complex, as the electricity current reaches that complex, it automatically shoots out into various spheres of, say, for example, the abdomen, the naval system. It shoots out into all those various organs connected to the abdomen, where you have your stomach and liver and spleen and all those things. And it also adds a certain purification to it. As the energy, the current goes through on the wires of Ida and Pingala, they purify the other areas in turn until the whole physiology, biology, and psychology of the man is so improved, and its psychicology, it's a new word, and its psychicology is improved, then one merges away into divinity. Now, these are systems, and it is not even necessary to believe in these systems. It is not even necessary to believe in the systems, because in our methods, although we do make use of the chakras, where we do find that the current is going to this one distribution point of the heart, for example, and in this electrical distribution box, there are some wires loose, and that energy is not going through. So we give some practices to tighten up those wires so the energy can flow. That we do by our certain psychic practices. We do that. Right. But the belief in it is not necessary. The practice of it is necessary. You can believe you are a king and still be a pauper. So we have to do or die. As I say. Yes. And by dying, I mean, I don't mean a physical death. There's no death. We know that. It is just postponing of that which is inherently made for us, good for us, that we really are. We are that divinity. We, with our gross bodies, we also incorporate within ourselves a subtle mental body. And with that, we also incorporate within ourselves that spiritual body. And it's just for us to give vent, clear up the mud, clear the snow so that the car can go through. The snow is blocking the road. Clear up the snow to the sides. And the car goes through. The vehicle of the spirit, infinity, is within us, and we give it vent to clear, go through the road of life in all greater and greater joy. That's what we do.
Do the shepherds have to develop what I would call in appropriate orders, or can they develop in any order?
The chakras, now, there are some schools of thought. Let me explain you a few of them. There is a school of thought that would tell you that the energies can proceed only from one direction, and that is from the lowest chakra, the Muladhara chakra. From the Muladhara to the Swadhisthana, from the Swadhisthana to the Manipur, Anhat, etc. Right. They believe that because they feel that these various chakras represents the various stages of evolution of man. There are 7 existences. They say there are 7 planes of existences, and every chakra represents a certain plane of existence. So, to proceed, the Muladhara is the lower plane of existence. From there, the Swadhisthana is a little higher plane of existence, and then the Manipur, Anhat, etc. Right. So they believe that one has to go through these one by one to reach the destination, to reach the Sahasrara. That is one school of thought. There's another school of thought that you do proceed not only from down up, but there is something that comes from up down. The Sahasrara, which is regarded to be Shiva, or the sum total, the Brahman, also comes down as soon as you start activating the lower. And as soon as you start bringing it up, that divine energy from top also comes down. That's grace. And meets. And where is the meeting point? At the heart. The meeting point is at the heart complex, the heart chakra, where the heart so unfolds that here the lower self and the higher self come join hands. The lower chakras require some effort to develop, to open. Right. And we discussed that last week in Raj Yoga, that the various principles of yam, niyam, asanas, pranayam. We left out pranayam last week. But pranayam forms part and parcel of asanas. It is practically one school, really, but it can be differentiated. So we do our bit, and from on top, the greater bit is done. And they meet here in the heart. Now, the heart is the core of one's personality. And when we raise the power from downstairs and the big power comes from upstairs and meets in the heart, what a great, beautiful explosion of joy and love. And God is love. He's there. He's there practically, practicality. The Sahasrara, the Shiva, or the Brahman, there is useless alone. The Brahman or God is useless, sitting up there alone. It is only useful when the absolute merges with the relative and becomes one, part and parcel, and functions together as one entity. And that is what we are trying to do. We are trying to function as one entity which is combined with the absolute and the relative, so that no demarcation is left. And the divinity or the absolute becomes so one with the relative, like sand and water, becoming one, forming mud, unseparated, within one another, within, as one totality. We live half. Our lives are only half. We only live reality, relativity. Yeah. But if we can draw more and more power from upstairs, what a richer life. What a richer life. Oh, yes. How blissful. How blissful. Yes. Okay. Yes. We always aim at, even discussing, I have repeated this many times, even going to the depths of the highest philosophy of metaphysics, we must bring it down to practical levels, the level of day-to-day living. Otherwise, philosophies are of no use. They are just mental gymnastics, exercises for the mind. Yeah. And you find so many philosophies in the world, each one contradicting the other. And each one say, this is my God, and this is my God, and this is my way, and that's your way. Fine. But the greatest way is to combine them, all them. And where do we combine them? What do philosophers do? They combine them in the minds. I say combine them in the heart. Let it explode there. Take the lower powers and the higher powers. Merge them. Merge them. Let the explosion be in the heart. And let that love just enfold, encompass this entire universe. It's breathtaking. Yes. Good. Anyone else?
Guruji, I was reading this Victoria, I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. It's just a particular remark it's made. It's about two people who become Buddhists. They did not realize yet that Buddha's very eagerness to free himself from pain and sorrow is in itself a sort of greed.
Yes. We have some trouble with people hearing questions. Can I read that passage so that it can go into the recorder better?
They did. They.
They did not realize yet that Buddha's very eagerness to free himself from pain and sorrow is in itself a sort of greed. Yes, yes. Here this whole sentence depends on this one word, himself. Who is himself? It can be interpreted in two ways. Now, by himself, does he mean his individual ego, or by himself does he mean the universal ego? Now, if he meant to free himself from pain and sorrow, he is doing it for himself. Now, that is greed. In a sense, it is greed. It might not even be greed if he wants to free himself from pain and sorrow with the purpose of evolution in mind, to find Buddhahood, to find nirvana. Then there's a good purpose to it. That greed can be condoned. It still remains a greed. But if this passage is taken in the context that he wanted to free himself from pain and sorrow, and by himself, if he means the entirety of existence, then it is good. But if the Buddha wanted to free himself as the universe from pain and sorrow, and a man can only say that if he is the universe, where is the place for pain and sorrow? This passage is contradictory. This passage is very, very contradictory. Because once you become the entire universe, you are not the condition of becoming everything. Becoming the entire universe, the condition and the quality is bliss. Pain and sorrow are only conceived by the small self. So this passage might be, I have not read your book, but it might be the process of Siddhartha trying to reach Gautam Buddhahood. And these might be the experiences he had in the path. That let me first free myself of pain and sorrow so that I could show the world how to free themselves of pain and sorrow. So it is valid. It is valid. It depends what interpretation we put on it. It depends from which angle we study the matter. Yes. Now, it is good if it was in his process. I mentioned earlier that even a realized man, by having taken the process of birth, he has taken on himself a certain momentum that through some years of living, he has to work off that momentum and go through many things in life. He has to go through many experiences to awaken in himself, to come to a recognition of himself, to be able to portray that exactly in his teachings to the world. So there is validity if it is progression in that path to enlightenment. It is true. Because Buddha experimented a lot. Up to the age of 29, he lived in lavish palaces and had all the joys and worldly material joys of the world, mundane things. And then he realized that this is not all. It did not satisfy him. And then he became a mendicant. And we know Buddha's story. He meditated and went through various severe austerities. And then when he was illumined, he came to the conclusion that these austerities are not necessary. And that is how Buddha advocated the middle path. The middle path. Take nothing to extremes. Now, the middle path could have, according to our philosophies, a very beautiful connotation. The middle path, to me, could mean so well the combination of the absolute with the relative, and for them to come into the middle of life and daily living. Huh? Beautiful, beautiful. Good. Who shall ask us more questions?
Bruno, could you tell us a little bit about the third eye? And what sort of...
You want to know a little about the third eye? Fine. Is there anything specific you want to know about it? I see. Yeah, so in other words, it's a general question. And you would know that a general question can only be answered generally. Fine. If it's a specific question, then we answer specifically. Now, what we mean by a specific question is that we take one mass or one concept and we analyze the concept in its various facets. So a facet of a concept could be a specific question. But now here, your question is very good. It is a general question on what is the third eye. Fine. The third eye is equated very much so now with, we call it the Ajna Chakra in Sanskrit, which means that beyond the physical eyes, there is also a psychic eye. And the physical eyes can only perceive physical things, while the psychic eyes can perceive things which are superphysical. Supraphysical, is that the word? Beyond the physical?
Yes.
Supraphysical. Yeah. So the third eye can perceive things which are supraphysical. Now, by activating, developing the power to be able to use the third eye, we can fathom subtler layers of existence. We now, with the physical eyes, know only of these mundane things which we see, but with the opening of the third eye or the Ajna Chakra, we can perceive more subtler levels of existence. Do these perceptions help us? That is a specific question. Do these perceptions help us? It helps us in the sense that it will dawn on us that this is just not all that matters. All these things of the five senses is not all that matters. Hearing, tasting, seeing, smelling, tasting. That is not the entirety of one's life. In the totality of life, there are finer levels of existence. And by opening the third eye, we practically witness and see the finer levels of existence. And by seeing the finer levels of existence, it encourages us to proceed further, to probe further. Today, human beings are just satisfied. They get up in the morning, they go to work, they sleep at night, next morning they get up, go to work, sleep at night, eat in between, and what have you. And that constitutes their whole life. Now, if there are practices to open the third eye, it will create in them the yearning, the wanting. It will convince them that there is something more in life than just this that we know about. So that has a specific practical value. And we have practice, which some of you are doing, in opening the third eye. And nowadays we have heard from scientists, and this is still hypothetical, which will, I hope, soon be made into theory, that the third eye has a definite effect upon the pineal gland. And by the activation of the third eye, one automatically activates the pineal gland. And with the activation and stimulation of the pineal gland, a substance is secreted called melatonin. And this melatonin, according scientists, have a great general beneficial value on the entire human organism, on all the glands and on all the organs and muscles and everything. And with the substance, it makes one's physiology better, one's biology better, and one's psychology better. Now, this third eye you were talking about is the eye that has extrasensory, can perceive, that has extrasensory perception of things beyond the physical level into a far finer physical level. The activation of that helps to develop this sense. And this has worked where you have people with the powers of clairvoyance, powers of clairaudience, and various occult sciences. But then these sciences are not important at all. They're not important. Sometimes they can be a stumbling block. In Sanskrit, we call them siddhis, these occult powers. And I always use an analogy that if we leave our front door and want to go to the gate, so we walk through the garden path, and on the way we would find flowers and shrubs and beautiful lawn. So we don't get lost in the flowers and the lawn, but we proceed to the gate because we have to get out of the gate and onto our business. So one should never lose the goal of self-realization, self-integration, because these occult powers are very elementary powers. They're very, to us it seems supernatural, to many it seems that, because they don't understand it. 60, 70 years ago, if you tell someone that a 2,000-ton piece of metal can fly through the air, they would say you are mad. Now things seem supernatural to us because we don't understand them. And the human mind, in an evolutionary process, will begin to understand them more and more and more. Today, only people with mystics, as we can call them, understand them or experience them, although perhaps not being able to explain them, but they experience them. And they know that these are truths. Perhaps time will come when these things could be measured by electronic devices. And a start has been made in this field where the Kirlian photography has started, Kirlian's method has started photographing the human aura and things like that. I read in a book recently. So these progresses are being made, but they are not supernatural. They are all natural, all within the means of nature, all within relativity, but perhaps at a more subtler plane. Now, the third eye activates those powers of subtler perceptions. And it's a good exercise. It's a good exercise to do because it also activates the pineal gland and helps one physically. Yes. By activating the third eye, the practices brings upon one, the exercise helps one to focus all of one's mental energies to one focal point. It aids concentration. And the most important thing in life and in work is concentration. The difference between success and failure is concentration. Now, if a person is totally concentrated on something, naturally that action becomes powerful and successful. So in every way, the practice of opening the third eye has very, very many benefits. So some of you are doing it and carry on. It's good. Very good. Very good. Right. Good. Do we have anyone else, or shall we break for tea? Let's talk another 10 minutes. We'll make it 12:30.
You're talking about meditation really are.
Yeah.
Some of us, I actually doing it for a long time, some of it I started. how do we realize if our meditation is successful or is deep or less? What's good?
Good. Some of us are meditating for a little while and some for a longer while. And how do we know if our meditations are successful? Fine. That is very easy. After initiating a person, we always insist on checking the meditation. We always insist on that. And by checking the meditation, we're asking various questions or sitting down. Sometimes it's not even necessary if the practice is going right. And then we sit down meditating with the person. And from there, we could very easily see if the meditation is done properly. And if it is done properly, by the very experiences, one can gauge if any progress has been made. And how fast is the progress made? That can be gauged. Should the progress be faster? That can be gauged. And a very important thing is checking. So, of course, I tell everyone that the checking is very important. And even after that, if they want to pop in after a few weeks or a month to have the meditations checked and have a discussion about the meditations and their practical daily life and how it is affecting and what's happening and what not, it would always be to the benefit of the meditator. Always, always, always. And I have found, and others have found, that even if a person comes for a little chat, they sit and discuss, and there's slow communication. Even in that, there is a benefit. Oh, yes, definitely. Yes.